Chief entomologist Naira Vex stood at the observation deck of the research vessel, Quantum Lens, her 4 eyes fixed on the blue-green planet below. Her iridescent scales shifted colors with her mounting anxiety, a trait her species had never quite evolved past, despite their advanced civilization. Earth hung in the void like a marble, deceptively peaceful from orbit. If only she knew then how that peaceful appearance masked the truth of what awaited below. Preliminary scans complete, Chief Vex announced ARIA-7, their artificial research assistant. The holographic entity materialized beside her, taking the form of a flowing collection of data streams. The target organisms are exactly where the Galactic Science Council predicted. Shall I prepare the descent pod? Naira's scales flickered to a deep blue of contemplation. After 3 centuries of studying the galaxy's most dangerous creatures, she had been chosen to lead this mission for her unparalleled expertise in xenoentomology. The Council had deemed Earth's insects primitive, a classification that would prove to be their first of many mistakes. Deploy the preliminary probe first, Naira ordered, her secondary arms inputting commands into the ship's neural interface. Standard protocol for Class D life forms. She almost felt embarrassed ordering such extensive precautions for creatures that barely registered on the galactic intelligence scale. Almost. The probe, a sphere of self-repairing quantum metal, no larger than her primary palm, descended through Earth's atmosphere. Its surface was covered in sensors capable of analyzing everything from chemical signatures to neural patterns. It was designed to study creatures far more advanced than simple insects. That was their second mistake. Probe has reached the target zone, ARIA-7 reported. Location: Earth designation, Amazon rainforest. Beginning initial scan of local insect population. The first images came through on the ship's main viewport, and Naira felt her scales shift to the yellow of scientific curiosity. The forest floor teemed with life, countless tiny organisms moving in patterns that seemed random at first glance. But as the probe's eye began analyzing the movements, something unexpected emerged. Chief, ARIA-7's voice carried an unusual note of concern. I'm detecting organized behavioral patterns that exceed our preliminary classifications by several orders of magnitude. Naira moved closer to the display, all 4 eyes widening as she processed what she was seeing. A colony of what the humans called army ants was on the move, but this was no simple migration. The insects moved with military precision, their formation protected by larger specimens in positions that maximized defensive coverage. They weren't just moving, they were deploying. Impossible, she whispered, her scales now pulsing with the green of confusion. The Council's data suggested no signs of collective intelligence among Earth's invertebrates. The probe moved closer, its sensors focusing on the ants' complex movements. That was their third and final mistake. The reaction was instantaneous. The ant colony, somehow detecting the probe's presence, shifted its entire formation. Larger specimens, which they would later identify as soldiers, moved to protective positions around smaller workers. But it was what happened next that would change everything they thought they knew about primitive life forms. Chief, ARIA-7's voice shifted to alarm frequencies. The organisms are exhibiting coordinated defensive strategies. They're communicating across the entire colony simultaneously. Naira watched in fascination and horror as the ants began to climb the probe, their movements synchronized with impossible precision. Some specimens released chemical compounds that shouldn't have been able to affect their advanced materials. Others formed living bridges and towers, creating structures that defied their understanding of insect engineering capabilities. Probe integrity at 87% and falling, ARIA-7 reported, her holographic form flickering with agitation. The chemical compounds they're secreting. They're adapting their composition in response to our defensive measures. That's not possible, Naira protested, her scales now flashing the deep red of emergency. They can't possibly have the neural capacity to. She never finished that sentence. The probe's video feed showed the ants somehow coordinating a simultaneous attack on every crucial sensor node. They had identified the probe's weaknesses within minutes of contact. The last image they received was of a soldier ant looking directly into the primary camera, its mandibles positioned with almost surgical precision before the feed went dark. As Naira stared at the blank screen, her scales shifting through colors she didn't even know she could produce, she realized the Galactic Science Council had made a fundamental error in their assessment of Earth's life forms. They had assumed that intelligence required size, that consciousness demanded complexity visible to their sophisticated sensors. Area 7, she said, her voice barely a whisper, prepare a Priority 1 communication to the Council. Classification update needed for Earth's insect species. And she paused, watching as the probe's last location continued to swarm with activity. Request immediate clearance for deployment of military-grade research equipment. In the darkness of Earth's forest floor, millions of tiny minds connected in ways her species had never imagined possible. The ant colony resumed its march. They had learned from this encounter, just as they had learned from every challenge their world had presented them over millions of years of evolution. And somewhere in the depths of their collective intelligence, they began to prepare for the next encounter with these new, interesting creatures from above. Naira didn't know it yet, but this was just the beginning. The ants were merely the guardians of the gate, the first line of defense in a world where the smallest creatures had evolved into the most extraordinary warriors. And as she prepared for their next observation attempt, Earth's other insects continued their ancient activities, unaware that they were about to become the subject of the most important xenobiological study in galactic history. Chief Entomologist Naira Vex had never filed a mission update while hiding in a reinforced shelter before. Her scales flickered between anxiety purple and determination gold as she recorded her findings, the sounds of impact against the shelter's outer hull punctuating her words. After the ant colony incident, we upgraded our observation equipment with military-grade shielding, she dictated, wincing as another thud resonated through the structure. We believed this would be sufficient for studying Earth's flying insects. We were wrong. Again. The video feed from their latest probe displayed on the shelter's internal screens, showing footage from just hours earlier. The team had launched their study of what humans called dragonflies, expecting to find simple predatory behavior. Instead, they discovered aerial combat specialists that made their most advanced fighter ships look primitive by comparison. Area 7, replay the initial encounter, Naira commanded. The AI complied, projecting a holographic recreation of the morning's events. The new probe, 3 times the size of the one they'd lost to the ants and equipped with adaptive camouflage, had tracked a dragonfly hunting above a water body humans called a pond. The insect's aerial maneuvers defied their understanding of flight physics. It could hover, fly backwards, and change direction instantaneously without losing speed. Speed analysis complete, Area 7 reported, her holographic form displaying the calculations. The target organism can accelerate from 0 to maximum velocity in less than a second, with a success rate of 95% in prey capture. Our most advanced military vessels require at least 3 seconds for similar acceleration. But it wasn't just the dragonfly's individual capabilities that had forced them into the shelter. It was what happened when their probe attracted the attention of multiple specimens simultaneously. The footage showed the moment everything went wrong. A group of dragonflies had noticed the probe's observation lights, and rather than flee from the unknown object, they exhibited behavior that Naira's scales still turned white with fear remembering. They coordinated. Frame-by-frame analysis, she commanded, her secondary arms inputting markers into the research log. Note the precision of their formation. Each insect maintains optimal distance from the others, creating an attack pattern that maximizes coverage while minimizing their own vulnerability. The hologram showed the dragonflies executing what could only be described as a military-grade intercept strategy. They surrounded the probe, using the sun's position to blind its sensors, then struck from multiple angles with their legs extended, legs that, they discovered, could snatch prey from the air with the force of a magnetic grappling system. Chief, Ris-7's voice carried that now familiar tone of concerned fascination. I've completed the neural scanning analysis from before we lost the probe. The dragonfly's brains were processing spatial information faster than our quantum computers. They were calculating trajectories, wind patterns, and intercept courses in real time. Naira's scales shifted to the deep blue of scientific revelation. They're not just predators, she whispered. They're natural-born combat pilots with processing power we didn't think possible in organisms their size. Another impact shook the shelter, harder this time. After disabling the probe, the dragonflies had turned their attention to the research team's observation post. Their protective shields, designed to withstand micrometeorite impacts, were being systematically tested by creatures weighing mere grams. But that's not even the most concerning discovery. Naira continued, her scales rippling with unease. Area-7. Show the hive footage. The hologram shifted to their brief observation of what humans called a bee colony before that situation too had deteriorated. The images showed thousands of insects moving in perfect coordination, their hive mind making decisions faster than any AI the galaxy had yet produced. They had watched as the bees transformed their defensive formation in response to the probe's presence, creating living architectures that adapted in real time to every countermeasure. The bees demonstrated problem-solving abilities that should be impossible for their brain size, Area-7 noted. They didn't just react to our presence. They innovated new solutions. They learned. A new alarm sounded inside the shelter. Naira's scales flashed emergency red as she checked the readings. The dragonflies had discovered a pattern in their shield modulation. They were timing their impacts to match the microsecond fluctuations in the energy field. Priority update to the Galactic Science Council, Naira dictated, her voice steady despite her rapidly shifting scale colors. Earth's flying insects exhibit Type 3 combat intelligence with Type 4 adaptation capabilities. Recommend immediate reclassification, and she paused as something large landed on the shelter's external scanner. And evacuation protocols. The external camera showed a new arrival, a specimen that dwarfed the dragonflies. Its black and yellow coloring triggered an instinctive fear response that turned Naira's scales completely white. The humans had a name for this one too. Asian giant hornet. Area-7 provided, her holographic form dimming slightly, also known as the murder hornet in human documentation. As Naira watched the massive insect begin a methodical inspection of their shelter's defenses, she realized that their mission had crossed a line from scientific research into survival horror. The hornet released a pheromone signal, and in the distance, more of its kind began to appear. Area-7, Naira said quietly, her scales now pulsing with every shade of fear her species could produce. Prepare the emergency teleport beacon and update the mission classification. Earth's insects aren't just surprising anymore. They're teaching us that we never understood what primitive really meant. The shelter's shields began to whine as the hornets coordinated their assault, and Naira realized that their next report to the council, if they survived to make it, would need a completely new classification system. One that acknowledged that on Earth, size had nothing to do with deadliness, and that the true rulers of this world might not be the large creatures that walked its surface, but the small ones that had perfected warfare over millions of years of evolution. Chief entomologist Naira Vex's scales had settled into a persistent shade of troubled gray as she recorded her latest findings. After the aerial assault forced them to abandon their surface observation post, the team had established a new facility underground, believing they'd be safer beneath the Earth's surface. That assumption, like so many others on this mission, had proven catastrophically wrong. Surface insects demonstrated unprecedented tactical capabilities. She dictated, her 4 eyes constantly scanning the bunker's structural integrity readings. But what we've discovered below ground defies everything we thought we knew about biological engineering. Area-7's holographic form flickered to life beside her, displaying 3-dimensional models of their recent discoveries. Chief, the termite colony analysis is complete. You need to see this. The display expanded to show the intricate structure they'd discovered 3 days ago, a termite megalopolis that made their most advanced space habitats look primitive by comparison. The insects had created a climate-controlled environment that extended hundreds of meters in every direction, complete with agricultural zones, waste management systems, and what appeared to be specialized medical facilities. Their environmental control exceeds our current technology, Naira noted, her scales flickering with reluctant admiration. They maintained temperature variations within 0.1 degrees across thousands of cubic meters, using nothing but passive airflow systems we barely understand. The sound of scratching against the bunker's outer walls made her pause. The termites had noticed their presence almost immediately, and their response had been innovative. "Play back the first contact footage," she commanded. The hologram shifted to show their initial probe's entrance into the termite structure. The insects had allowed them to penetrate several layers deep into their colony, another tactical decision they'd failed to recognize until too late. Once the probe reached a certain depth, the termites revealed their true capabilities. They didn't just attack the probe, Area 7 observed, highlighting specific sections of the footage. They studied it first. Note the specialized worker casts taking samples of our materials, testing them with different chemical compounds. Naira's scales rippled with the orange of scientific fascination despite her anxiety. They reverse-engineered our protective coatings within hours. The subsequent chemical countermeasures they deployed were specifically formulated to breach our defenses. But the termites had been just the beginning. Their forced retreat deeper underground had led to an encounter that shattered their remaining preconceptions about Earth's insects. "Show the beetle footage," Naira commanded, her scales darkening at the memory. The hologram displayed their discovery of what humans called the dung beetle. Initially, they'd dismissed these insects as simple waste managers. That was before they witnessed one moving a sphere of material 5,000 times its body weight, using celestial navigation more precise than their ship's basic guidance systems. "We tracked one specimen for 6 hours," Naira continued. "It maintained perfect orientation using stellar positioning, compensated for terrain variations with mathematical precision, and demonstrated problem-solving abilities that—" She paused as another impact resonated through the bunker walls. Area 7. Structural Integrity Report. "The termites have breached Level 3 shielding," the AI reported. "They've developed a new acid compound. Chief, they're learning from each failure. Each new attempt is more efficient than the last." Naira's scales flashed warning red as she examined the damage reports. The termites weren't just breaking through their defenses. They were doing so with increasingly sophisticated chemical weapons they were developing in real time. "Priority update to the Council," she dictated. "Earth's subterranean insects demonstrate Type 5 engineering capabilities and unprecedented adaptive learning. They're not just surviving underground. They're mastering their environment in ways that—" A new alarm cut her off. The bunker's sensors had detected movement in the surrounding soil. A lot of movement. "Multiple colonies converging on our location," Area 7 reported, her holographic form displaying rapidly updating threat assessments. "The termites have somehow communicated our presence to other species. I'm detecting tunnel networks being established in coordinated patterns. Chief, they're cooperating." The implications hit Naira like a gravity wave. Different species, previously believed to be independent, were working together to address the threat their presence represented. The technological gap she'd been so confident in at the mission's start wasn't just closing. In many ways, these insects had already surpassed them. "Emergency protocol authorization," she commanded, her scales now strobing between fear white and decision purple. "Begin data burst transmission to the ship. They need to know what we found here." The scratching sounds grew louder, accompanied now by a new noise, the distinctive hiss of chemical reactions eating through their reinforced walls. Through the bunker's remaining sensors, Naira watched as different insect species took up tactical positions around their shelter. Termites deployed their chemical weapons, while other, larger insects she couldn't identify began systematic strikes against structural weak points they shouldn't have been able to detect. ARIS-7, Naira said quietly, her scales settling into the deep blue of revelation. Update mission parameters. We didn't come here to study primitive life forms. We've stumbled into a civilization more advanced than ours in ways we never thought to measure, and they've decided we need to be removed. As the bunker's integrity alarms reached critical levels, Naira realized that humanity had evolved alongside these creatures for millennia, never fully understanding that they shared their world with engineers and architects whose capabilities bordered on the miraculous. Her only hope now was that she'd survive long enough to warn the Council that they needed to completely reassess their understanding of intelligence, civilization, and the true masters of Earth's biosphere. Chief entomologist Naira Vex's scales hadn't shown a natural color in days, locked in a constant strobe between terror white and survival red. After the underground facility was compromised, they'd been forced to abandon their stationary research approaches entirely. Now they were on the move, their mobile unit crawling through the rainforest, like prey being stalked by predators that defied explanation. Emergency log continuation, she dictated, her voice barely above a whisper as the unit's sensors tracked multiple approaching threats. We thought we understood predation. We've studied apex hunters across 1,000 worlds. But nothing prepared us for this. ARIS-7's holographic form manifested at minimal luminosity. They'd learned the hard way that even artificial light could attract unwanted attention. Chief, the trapjaw ant analysis is ready, though I advise against reviewing it until we've reached a safer position. Naira's scales flickered with bitter amusement. There were no safe positions left, not since they'd discovered what Earth's predatory insects were truly capable of. Display the analysis, she commanded. If we don't survive this mission, the Council needs to understand what we found here. The hologram showed footage from their encounter with the trapjaw ants 3 days ago. They'd thought their new mobile unit, equipped with the finest defensive technology in the galaxy, would keep them safe. Then they watched as an ant accelerated its jaws to over 50 meters per second, striking with the force of a military-grade projectile. The mechanical efficiency exceeds our current engineering capabilities, ARIS-7 reported. Their mandibles generate forces that our materials science division classified as theoretically impossible at that scale. But it wasn't just the raw power that had shocked them. The trapjaw ants had demonstrated coordinated hunting strategies that made their previous encounters seem simple by comparison. They used their powerful jaws not just as weapons, but as escape mechanisms, launching themselves through the air with precise trajectories to outmaneuver threats. A new alarm silenced their discussion. Something had breached the outer detection perimeter. Multiple assassin bugs approaching from Vector 7, ARIS-7 announced, her voice modulating to emergency frequencies. They've adapted to our camouflage frequencies again. Naira's scales pulsed with dread as she watched the approaching insects on their sensors. The assassin bugs had earned their name, proving to be hunters of unprecedented sophistication. Their ability to track prey using methods that seemed to ignore all known laws of physics had already cost them 2 security drones and their best collection of samples. Replay the ambush footage, she ordered, needing to document this while she still could. The hologram showed their first encounter with the assassin bugs. The insects had demonstrated not just hunting prowess, but strategic planning that bordered on precognition. They set traps, used decoys, and employed chemical warfare with terrifying precision. They're not just killing prey, Naira noted, her secondary arms inputting emergency codes as the unit's shields registered multiple impacts. They're experimenting, learning. Each encounter makes them more efficient at penetrating our defenses. The mobile unit's walls resonated with a new sound, a high-pitched vibration that made Naira's scales ripple with instinctive terror. They'd encountered this before, right before losing contact with their last research team. Tiger beetle approaching at high speed, Area 7 reported, displaying footage from their external cameras. Estimated velocity exceeding previous records. The tiger beetle appeared on their screens, moving so fast it had to stop periodically because its brain couldn't process visual information quickly enough at such speeds. Yet somehow, impossibly, it was still tracking them with perfect accuracy. "They're coordinating again," Naira observed, her scales now pulsing with the deep purple of scientific awe despite their situation. "The assassin bugs are herding us toward the tiger beetle's hunting grounds. They've learned to use each other's strengths." A massive impact rocked the mobile unit, followed by warning sirens as multiple systems began to fail. Through the cameras, Naira watched in horrified fascination as their attackers demonstrated yet another impossible capability. Chief entomologist Naira Vex recorded what she believed would be her final log entry from inside a quantum-sealed emergency pod, the last refuge after their mobile unit's catastrophic failure. Her scales had settled into a shade of blue so dark it was almost black, the color of fundamental revelation mixed with primal fear. To the Council, she began, all four eyes fixed on the pod's external feeds. "Everything we thought we knew was wrong. Everything. Earth isn't just another life-bearing world. It's not even just a world with surprisingly advanced insects. It's a laboratory where evolution has been conducting weapons research for hundreds of millions of years." Area 7's holographic form flickered weakly beside her, the AI systems struggling to process the data from their latest discovery. "Chief, the Titan beetle is approaching. And it's not alone." The external feeds showed what had finally broken their understanding of Earth's insect life completely. The Titan beetle, a creature that by itself redefined what they thought possible for insect size, moved through the undergrowth with deliberate purpose. But it wasn't the beetle's size that had shattered their last pretenses of superiority. It was what followed it. "The Council needs to understand the true scope of what we've discovered," Naira continued, her secondary arms working frantically to boost their transmission signal. "The insects we encountered weren't just isolated examples of advanced evolution. They're part of a planetary network of intelligence that we're only beginning to comprehend." The pod sensors tracked the approaching swarm, a living tide of insects that moved with impossible coordination. Species that should have been predator and prey worked together with single-minded purpose. Ants formed living bridges for beetles to cross. Wasps flew in formation with their former victims, creating aerial coverage patterns that any military strategist would envy. Even the termites they'd flood from underground had surfaced, their chemical weapons evolving by the hour. Each species we encountered represented a different aspect of technological advancement, Naira explained, her scales rippling with the colors of desperate understanding. The ants mastered warfare and social organization. The flying insects perfected aerial combat and swarm intelligence. The underground species developed engineering and chemical warfare beyond our comprehension. The hunters evolved weapons and tactics we thought impossible. But we never saw the full picture until now. Area 7's hologram expanded, showing a complex network of chemical and electromagnetic signals passing between the gathered species. "Chief, I'm detecting communication patterns that exceed our complexity models. They're not just cooperating, they're integrating." Before their eyes, the assembled insects demonstrated capabilities that went beyond anything they'd previously witnessed. The Titan beetle, already terrifying in its size and power, served as a living command center for smaller species. Patterns of bioluminescence rippled through the swarm, carrying information faster than their quantum computers could decode it. "The truth about Earth's insects isn't in their individual capabilities," Naira dictated, her voice steady despite the pod's integrity warnings. "It's that they've evolved into a collective intelligence beyond anything we imagined possible. Each species is a specialized component of a planetary-scale organism that's been evolving and perfecting itself since before mammals walked the Earth." The pod's external cameras captured footage of what looked like a military operation, but one orchestrated on a scale that made their most advanced battle computers seem primitive. Thousands of species, millions of individuals, all working in perfect concert. The Titan beetle coordinated with giant water bugs, their combined strength testing the pod's structural integrity, while smaller insects searched for vulnerabilities with tactical precision. Final observation. Naira recorded as the pod's last defenses began to fail. We came to study what we thought were primitive life forms, but we found something else. Earth's insects aren't just survivors or even just highly evolved predators. They're the result of an evolutionary arms race that's been running for hundreds of millions of years. Each species is a perfect weapon, honed by time and competition. And now, faced with what they perceive as a serious threat, they're combining those weapons in ways we never imagined possible. A new alarm sounded. The pod's quantum seal was failing. Through the cameras, Naira watched as the insects demonstrated their ultimate capability. Adaptation. They weren't just using their existing abilities. They were developing new ones, sharing successful mutations and strategies across species barriers in real time. To any future expeditions, she concluded, her scales showing a new color, one her species reserved for moments of transcendent understanding. Earth is not a primitive world to be studied. It's the most sophisticated military research and development facility in the galaxy, and we've just convinced its resident weapons specialists that we need to be eliminated. As the pod's final defenses gave way, Naira activated the emergency teleport beacon, hoping at least their data would reach the Council. Her last recording captured the image of the Titan beetle approaching, surrounded by a living armor of smaller insects, all moving with shared purpose and intelligence. In its compound eyes, she saw not the mindless stare of a primitive organism, but the calculated gaze of a species that had mastered war and evolution long before her kind had learned to look up at the stars. The insects of Earth had not just survived. They had turned survival into an art form, warfare into a science, and evolution into a tool. And now, as Naira's final transmission reached her ship in orbit, they had one more lesson to teach the galaxy. On this planet, size had never been the measure of superiority. The true masters of Earth had been there all along, waiting in plain sight for someone to notice their empire. An empire built on the perfect marriage of individual specialization and collective adaptation. As her emergency teleport activated, Naira realized that the galaxy would never look at primitive life the same way again. Earth's insects had not just changed their understanding of evolution. They had rewritten the very definition of civilization itself. Chief entomologist Naira Vex recorded what she believed would be her final log entry from inside a quantum-sealed emergency pod, the last refuge after their mobile unit's catastrophic failure. Her scales had settled into a shade of blue so dark, it was almost black, the color of fundamental revelation mixed with primal fear. To the Council, she began, all four eyes fixed on the pod's external feeds. Everything we thought we knew was wrong. Everything. Earth isn't just another life-bearing world. It's not even just a world with surprisingly advanced insects. It's a laboratory where evolution has been conducting weapons research for hundreds of millions of years. Aria-7's holographic form flickered weakly beside her, the AI systems struggling to process the data from their latest discovery. Chief, the Titan beetle is approaching. And it's not alone. The external feeds showed what had finally broken their understanding of Earth's insect life completely. The Titan beetle, a creature that by itself redefined what they thought possible for insect size, moved through the undergrowth with deliberate purpose. But it wasn't the beetle's size that had shattered their last pretenses of superiority. It was what followed it. The Council needs to understand the true scope of what we've discovered, Naira continued, her secondary arms working frantically to boost their transmission signal. The insects we encountered weren't just isolated examples of advanced evolution. They're part of a planetary network of intelligence that we're only beginning to comprehend. The pod's sensors tracked the approaching swarm, a living tide of insects that moved with impossible coordination. Species that should have been predator and prey worked together with single-minded purpose. Ants formed living bridges for beetles to cross. Wasps flew in formation with their former victims, creating aerial coverage patterns that any military strategist would envy. Even the termites they'd flood from underground had surfaced, their chemical weapons evolving by the hour. Each species we encountered represented a different aspect of technological advancement. Naira explained, her scales rippling with the colors of desperate understanding. The ants mastered warfare and social organization. The flying insects perfected aerial combat and swarm intelligence. The underground species developed engineering and chemical warfare beyond our comprehension. The hunters evolved weapons and tactics we thought impossible. But we never saw the full picture until now. Area 7's hologram expanded, showing a complex network of chemical and electromagnetic signals passing between the gathered species. Chief, I'm detecting communication patterns that exceed our complexity models. They're not just cooperating, they're integrating. Before their eyes, the assembled insects demonstrated capabilities that went beyond anything they'd previously witnessed. The Titan beetle, already terrifying in its size and power, served as a living command center for smaller species. Patterns of bioluminescence rippled through the swarm, carrying information faster than their quantum computers could decode it. The truth about Earth's insects isn't in their individual capabilities, Naira dictated, her voice steady despite the pod's integrity warnings. It's that they've evolved into a collective intelligence beyond anything we imagined possible. Each species is a specialized component of a planetary-scale organism that's been evolving and perfecting itself since before mammals walked the Earth. The pod's external cameras captured footage of what looked like a military operation, but one orchestrated on a scale that made their most advanced battle computers seem primitive. Thousands of species, millions of individuals, all working in perfect concert. The Titan beetle coordinated with giant water bugs, their combined strength testing the pod's structural integrity, while smaller insects searched for vulnerabilities with tactical precision. Final observation. Naira recorded as the pod's last defenses began to fail. We came to study what we thought were primitive life forms, but we found something else. Earth's insects aren't just survivors or even just highly evolved predators. They're the result of an evolutionary arms race that's been running for hundreds of millions of years. Each species is a perfect weapon, honed by time and competition. And now, faced with what they perceive as a serious threat, they're combining those weapons in ways we never imagined possible.